Welcome back to Open Line tonight. We are talking about the Zika virus. If you've been watching the news, you hear about it every day, but it seems to really be an evolving story where we learn new things about this virus, new things about the symptoms and the way it's spreading every day. We're here to take your calls tonight. I have two wonderful doctors from Metro Health Department here with me to answer your questions. And we have David on the line. David, thanks for being with us tonight. Go ahead with your question.
Okay. I've noticed that mosquitoes do not like broad daylight. If you cut back your shade, the mosquitoes will find somewhere else to hang out. And if mosquitoes can transmit the Zika, West Nile, encephalitis, and malaria, can't they also carry in their little blood tankers the hepatitis and AIDS?
All right, good question. What do you guys think about that?
Good questions. Two questions. One is about mosquitoes and daylight and nighttime, and we always hear different answers about that. I'm going to ask Dr. Ariola to take a stab at that one.
Well, the mosquitoes have, there are different kinds of mosquitoes. This particular type of mosquitoes, it is Egypti, it is Albopictus day biters. They like to bite in the days. They are attracted to darkness. They like the shrubberies, and one of the things with them is they will sneak behind you and bite you, especially if you are wearing dark clothing. But we have different kinds of mosquitoes. The mosquitoes, for example, that we are worried about with West Nile virus are slightly different. They are more active at dusk and at night. But so we pattern our responses depending on what we know about the particular kind of mosquitoes. So these mosquitoes are daytime biters. They're much more active. That's not suggesting that they're not active at dusk, but they're more active during the day, and they are very aggressive biters and very difficult to control.
And in fact, the West Nile mosquitoes are more active at night, right? So it's really a 24-hour concern.
Yes, so these are Aedes mosquitoes. The West Nile virus mosquitoes are mostly Culex species. So really, even though we use mosquitoes, there are different kinds of mosquitoes with different habits. Yeah.
Okay. Now, the second question about if these mosquitoes can transmit Zika, can they transmit AIDS? What about other things?
Well, it turns out that only some viruses really are able to be transmitted through a mosquito's bite. This was when HIV and AIDS were really new in Florida. There was a concern about maybe the spread in a particular neighborhood could have been for mosquitoes, and it was looked at very, very extensively. And it's been proven that HIV virus is not something that is transmitted by mosquitoes. And so it's kind of a complicated thing. There has to be enough virus in the blood, and that has to survive in the mosquito. And some of the viruses have to actually multiply in the mosquito, so there's enough virus there to be transmitted to the next person. And so most of the viruses that we think about every day, like whether it's flu, whether it's hepatitis, whether it's HIV, they're just not a concern as far as mosquito-borne infections are. But there are plenty of infections that are borne by mosquitoes. And some people have said that if there was one animal that killed more people than anything else, it's actually the mosquito.
Oh gosh, we all hate them. We have more reason this year than ever to hate them, Yeah, exactly. This whole show's making me kind of itchy. And hey, I do have a question, though. If this is the first year that we have heard about Zika virus, it's the first year that most of the Western Hemisphere is dealing with Zika virus. After this season is over, is this likely to be over? Or are we going to be dealing with this year after year?
I suspect it's going to be with us year after year. Now, sometimes, so when, remember when West Nile came through, the first years of West Nile, it was very big on the East Coast, and it was very big in the Midwest, and then it was very big out in the mountains and the plains. And then since then, it seems to have stabilized a little bit. So we always hope for that, but as it is a new virus, we can't necessarily guarantee that. But I think if there's so many people becoming infected now, those people are becoming immune. So as time goes on, the size of the epidemic might go down.
We can only hope. Okay, let's jump back to the lines. Gay is on the line. Gay, thank you for being part of the show tonight. What's your question?
Well, I have several, but let me try to get my first one in. Is there signage at the airport that targets the planes that are coming in from Zika infected countries to warn people that deplaying what they should look for and to get medical treatment. Number two is, how old was the guy that died that was in Utah or someplace about a month ago.
Yeah.
And why was he an older man? Why would he die of the Zika?
Okay, Gabe, thank you very much for those questions. We'll get those answered. First, let's start with the plain signage. We've seen this with other illnesses.
Yes, we've worked with the Metro Nashville Airport. We've provided them with some signs. I'm not sure that I've seen them, but I also haven't traveled outside the country. So I think that's part of our communication strategy, but it's probably not the only part. And any one thing we can't really just rely on. When I'm getting off an airplane, I'm not looking to read a lot of signs.
True.
So it's important that everybody be aware, especially if you're talking about a woman who's pregnant who might become pregnant who travels to one of these areas.
And men as well need to be aware. I mean, we can't just put it on the lady, but men have to be aware because it can last longer in their bloodstream than it does in a woman. So it's particularly dangerous. And then Gay's second question was about the man in Utah. And I know he was an elderly man with other issues when he died.
You know, I don't know the details of that case. Sonny, have you heard about it?
No, I don't know the details, but it's. I think it's fair to say that if you have other pre-existing conditions, you might be more prone to the.
We see that with the flu sometime.
Right.
You know, the flu we don't think of as that serious. But if somebody has other conditions that make them medically fragile, the flu can be deadly. Can be very serious, can be deadly. So that might be the case. There is a rare complication. I don't know if this was a factor, but there's a rare complication of Zika that can happen to anyone called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and that's something that anybody would be concerned about. It's a neurologic condition. It's rare, thankfully.
And it can cause paralysis, right? And this can go hand in hand with Zika?
Yes.
All right, well, we haven't really heard about that really too much. Any problem with cases here in Nashville? People who have gotten that? And
no. I mean, it's less than 1% of people with Zika. I mean, it's a very, very small number that have been described with that.
And I can tell you, Gay, we reported on this man a couple of times in the news, and he was elderly, and he did have other complications, health complications, and he passed. And the big thing why this man made the news is because they weren't sure how he got it. He hadn't traveled, and evidently he hadn't been having sex with anyone. So that was the big question: was how did this man get Zika? But I have not heard the answer to that. Let's jump to Bob now. Bob's on the line. Thank you for being with us, Bob. What's your question tonight?
Thank you. I was wondering if Congress had stepped back and started funding the research on the Zika virus. You know, some of the doctors were talking about mouse vaccine or something like that, and they really, per Metro, they need to start spraying around the garbage can with bug spray. Thank you.
Bob, thank you very much. You know, great question. President Obama, I think, just last week made a call to Congress saying, come back, you've got to pass this funding. It hadn't happened.
Right.
How does that affected you guys?
It hasn't happened. You know, right now, we're okay because we don't have an epidemic of Zika. When you think about what's going on in Florida, so far that's still pretty contained, but it's an enormous amount of work to investigate, to control mosquitoes in that area where they've got the spread of Zika virus. And it feels like that could happen in any neighborhood where these mosquitoes are.
Right.
And it could eventually get to be a point where it's transmitting ongoing transmission. And so being able to intervene to stop an epidemic is something that really requires money.
Sure.
I mean, it requires people, it requires training, it requires equipment, all those things, especially with a mosquito infection. And so, yeah, it matters that Congress hasn't really passed money. There's some money that has come to the state of Tennessee. We're going to get some resources to do some things, and we'll be okay as long as it doesn't get any worse than it is now.
But there's that but. Yeah.
Right. I mean, we will always do everything we can to protect the people of Nashville, but it is really important for people to realize that you got to invest.
Yeah.
And one of the things that, you know, as this goes on in South and Central America, if it starts to take hold here in the continental United States, we're really going to wish we had a vaccine.
And let's talk about that. There is no vaccine at this time, and I know it seems as though from our reporting there's some scrambling to really get the research going.
Right.
What's the kind of timeline, though? Because as a person, I don't want a vaccine to come out in a month, and I think, is it effective?
Right.
Is it safe? You know, that's kind of scary. I don't want you injecting that into me if it hasn't been thoroughly tested. But on the flip side of that, we need something sooner rather than later if you believe in the vaccine.
And it's another example of the same thing. It's like if we really, what really motivates us to finally say it's time to get a vaccine is when there's, 1,000 babies in the U.S. born with microcephaly. Then it's too late. We haven't been out in front of it, and so that is a concern. I don't know the exact time from initial testing, and I think there are some candidate and some vaccines that are starting to be tested, but it does take time to get that out so where people can use it.
I mean, from the Fed, I think the earliest they think we can have any vaccine at all is 2018. So that's still a long way from now. So we still have to focus on mosquito control and educational piece to do that.
Well, walk me through, because we've had 5 cases here so far. When you all are notified, first of all, are those people coming to the health department saying, I think I might have Zika. Can you do a test? Walk me through what happens when the first question pops up.
Most people don't have that thought at all. And most people, and it's the right thing. It's like if I get sick and I wonder what it is, I call the doctor. I might call the emergency room to see if it's serious enough to go into the emergency room. But then really seeing your own personal healthcare provider, that person says, oh, you traveled and you have a rash and you have pink eyes and your aches or your joints are aching. They'll do a test. Then when that test is done, that triggers a report to the health department. And then once we get that report, we basically do an investigation. We talk to the person, and then we start that whole cascade of things. So really, just by doing what people do normally, seek medical attention, there are systems that bring those public health infections to our attention.
And when you've had these 5 cases pop up, you guys get notified, you go out and talk to the people who live in that area. What's been the reaction from neighbors? I know you're not saying, Bob over here has Zika.
Oh no,
but,
we don't say that.
You have to say, okay, this is happening in your area. What's been the reaction of people?
I think people have been very cooperative. I think I must point out that we've been doing similar things for West Nile virus for a long time. So people see us in the community, they're used to that kind of approach. But I guess everybody has been very cooperative. We try to make it a wide area. We can't ever do enough public education around mosquitoes, so we like that an opportunity to educate the public. We'll play a part, but the public has a major role to play in terms of mosquito control. But the response has been very good, very cooperative. People have been asking questions. So we've had mosquito control staff there. We've had communicable disease staff there. So it's been pretty good. The experiences have been good, and people have been very cooperative in terms of mosquito control. So every one of those cases is really an opportunity to do PR to the community. Hey, these mosquitoes, we can do something about them to a certain extent. And you have a role to play there.
And then beyond this type of education, you guys are going out and spraying, right? And
No, we're not spraying.
Okay.
And I think that's what we've been getting at. We do have, CDC recommends a phased response. What we have, travel cases, we don't have local transmission of Zika.
Yes, good
That's
point.
very
Yes.
important for people to know. So the efforts that we're doing, which is controlling mosquitoes at the immature stages, which is looking at the breeding sites, using larvicides, those are sufficient for now. Now, if the risk escalates, then all of the options will be considered.
So once we have any evidence that our own mosquitoes are infected with Zika, and we don't have any of that this far, that's when we start talking about, well, we want to protect people more. And so that's when the CDC would probably come advise us, the state would advise us, we'd look at things. Surprising in Florida, how small the area is that they're actually spraying. And that's because this particular type of mosquito doesn't fly very far. Mostly it's in our own backyards. And so there's so much that people can do just by getting out in the backyard on a regular basis, or if you don't have yards, just in your immediate vicinity, the alleys, what have you, and make sure there's not cans and bottles and flower pots.
Yes, and it's been
and
such a rainy month anyway.
bird
That's
pools,
a huge
yes,
problem.
yeah.
Not helping at all.
Right.
All right, we got to take another quick break. When we come back, more of your questions. Thanks for the folks who have already called in, David, Gay, and Bob. We appreciate hearing from you. If you've got a question, call in now. We'll be right back.